I have found that the life of a hidden one is no life at all. It is a thankless existence dedicated to the betterment of the people. We work in the dark to serve the light. We support those who stand against oppression, yet oftentimes this calls us to choose the lesser evil. My story is just one of many thousands, but I hope as I foretell its every bit and piece that it illuminates a valuable lesson about the creed, and by fortune, about life. This tale starts at the gates of Baghdad. Before I could enter the place I once called home, I saw in front of me a testament to the status of the city. Wives cry for their desperate husbands, an imprisoned father assuring his child that everything will be alright. And so I entered this seemingly familiar city as if I was returning into a once fleeted memory. I scaled the jagged walls of the stone houses and familiarized myself with the structure of the city. It did not take long for me to understand its architecture and how I could navigate effectively through its busy streets. And so I met with Rashan, my mentor, along with the wise and dangerous Fulad. This was the first time I laid my eyes upon a Hidden One bureau, a sanctuary where the poets of the Kill received their orders and an acting refuge in times of great peril. Upon a brief conference with my superiors, I received my first mission to find the rebel leader, Ali ibn Muhammad. This person, while an ally to the cause, was rumored to be brash. While this is no surprise for a rebel leader, it makes me wonder the path we are taking. Will this person cultivate liberty and peace? Or is he simply a wolf in sheep's clothing, using the hidden ones as a means to rise to power? But who am I to question? I am simply an initiate and may not know the deeper avenues of this situation. For now, all I can do is follow, complete my mission, then perhaps, when the moment is right, I can dare to question. And so I followed up on my first lead. I was to find a contact named Bashi, a man with deep ties and loyalty to Ali and the rebel cause. From initial reports, he may be lingering near the harbor, rallying his rebel men. So I set my eyes for the harbor, hoping that Bashi is somewhere nearby. With my fortune, I heard the rallying cries of a man, desperately inspiring his men to a seemingly impossible situation. It was Bashi, preparing himself and the other rebels to attack the harbor. It would seem that the city has captured some of the rebels and are keeping them nearby. At this time, I wanted to ask what the rebels did for them to get captured. Were they doing something illegal, harassing guards or committing some type of crime? Or were they imprisoned for simply believing an idea? For my sanity, I did not question. I simply accepted that it must be the latter one. A story as old as time. Men stripped off their liberty because they believed something else. So I offered my assistance to Bashi. Upon a quick glance, it was obvious that they were greatly outnumbered, and if by some impossible odds they succeed, they would surely suffer more casualties than they can save. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. I've trained for this, to face impossible odds not through brute force but through cunning and strategy. There is no reason to rush head on when you can safely slither in the bushes unseen. I began by looking for a way in, a spot where I can get a good view of the landscape but also well hidden to the patrolling guards. I found the perfect spot at the back of a building. A 5-foot pile of stone bricks lying beside its south wall would allow me to jump up, scale the second-story building, and reach the roof. But before I started my infiltration, I signaled Enkidu to find the captured rebels. This would give me an idea where to look and if my plan would not be hindered by a random guard dozing off on the rooftops. With ease, Enkidu found the 3 rebels I needed to free. One was inside a building to the north, the second was on a ship anchored in the harbor, and the third was under a shed just northeast of where I was standing. So I climbed the stone wall, clinging to the jagged bricks that had been misplaced by time and wear. Once I was on the roof, I used my enhanced senses to identify where the guards were patrolling. I then decided to first free the closest rebel, the one tied under a shed. I used a rope line towering beside me to reposition. This allowed me to get into a more effective spot to observe and plan. It quickly came to mind to simply drop debris and dispatch of the guards loitering about. This would have caused a decent enough distraction to let me free the captive rebel. However, one thing I learned from the Hidden Ones is that all life is precious. We do not take away life simply because they are in our way, and if we do, we must show respect. At this moment, I did not think that taking away life was necessary. I was trained to assassinate, to lurk in the shadows and await for the perfect moment to strike. But beyond this, I was also trained to show sympathy. My tools are not meant for simply delivering death, but to distract, to misdirect, and to save the innocent. So instead, I distracted the guards with my noisemakers. I then summoned a cloud of red. The cloud shrouded me from the guard watching the prisoner and allowed me to free him without being seen. I managed to escape without alerting the guards, but I am sure that at least one of them may have glimpsed what would seem to be a ghost emerging from a bleeding cloud. The next prisoner I wanted to free was the rebel held on the ship. It was obvious that the easiest way into the ship was through the water, so I visited the docks and borrowed a tiny boat. I managed to make my way to the side of the ship without alerting any guards. I climbed on the side of the ship using the protruding wooden parts. Once I got aboard, I noticed that one of the guards was suspicious of the boat at the side of the ship. Perhaps he was suspicious that I was paddling too close to the ship beforehand. Fortunately, he placed his suspicions to rest and headed back to his designated spot. From observing the guards on the ship, it was obvious that there was no easy way to free the rebel. One guard was watching him closely while the other patrols the deck. This left me no choice but to use my smoke bomb. In doing so, I immobilized one of the guards and freed the rebel. To escape, I simply climbed back down on the side of the ship and into the boat. I realized at this moment that I could use the boat to make my way through the water and into the northern part of the harbor where the last rebel is being held. Once I arrived at the riverbank, I made my way up to a building to observe the patrolling guards nearby. I was able to find a way to get onto the second floor balcony. However, the door was barred from the inside. This meant that I could only enter through the first floor. Unfortunately, there was a guard standing in front of the door. I tried to get his attention by whistling, but he simply checked around and went back to his spot. With no other choice, I decided to use a sleep dart to knock him out. In theory, the sleep dart should be safe and non-lethal. However, I dislike using this device since it may have unknown effects on the victim, but with no other choice, I made the decision. By the hands of fate, or simply by a whisper of an old memory, the unconscious guard captured the attention of another guard. This forced me to use a smoke bomb to quickly get into the building. Yet, I found that the door was locked, and I had no idea where the key was. But as I looked back to the guard, I heard a jingle of keys and managed to steal it while he was occupied. However, as I entered the building, he was able to catch a glimpse of me. He followed my tracks inside and found me cowered in a corner. I attempted to fend him off with my blade, yet at this brief moment, a notion came passing by. The question I had before: what were these rebels doing before they got caught? And these guards, they might just be doing their jobs. To take away the most precious thing of all from them, it would be something I would like to refrain from doing. So I unleash another cloud of red smoke, the last one that I have, to disable him. I swiftly freed the last rebel and fled the scene. As I made my escape, I noticed that the guards nearby were still unaware of my presence. But surely after the close encounter, the harbor would be on high alert. Eventually, I managed to return to Bashi and found that the rebels I freed were safe. With this errand complete, Bashi divulged to me more information about the matter. It would seem that the rebels were doing nothing wrong when they were captured. A man named Al Ghul was capturing the enemies of the Caliphate and turning them into slaves. I also learned that Ali, the rebel leader, was captured with them but was taken into a different place. This information that I have gained would have proved useful. However, there was still one more lead to follow up. I needed to talk to a rebel merchant who was helping the Hidden Ones and may have information about Ali. Arriving at the doors of the merchant's store, I felt a familiar presence. Upon entering the building, I realized what it was: a friend from long past. The merchant who was helping the cause was no other else than Dervish, and we had a lot of catching up to do.